Over 200 experts have shared their secrets to a successful business. Join me, Rose Davidson, as I discover how these experts took their businesses to the next level.
Talking with the experts.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. Talking about all things business by business owners for business owners. Episode 257 with Ron Surz.
But the most recent breakthrough is what's called target date funds. And I don't know if you have those there, or if maybe the superannuation fund does what a target date fund does. But the idea behind a target date fund is it takes a firm. Oh, by the way, it started for college savings plans, so it's been around for a long time here, and it's just started to be used a lot in savings plans here. But what it does is it starts fairly aggressive when you're young, and then as you get closer to retirement, it does what all the researchers say, it gets more conservative. But what I'll say there is the unfortunate reality for target date funds in this country is it starts at about 90% risky equities when you're pretty young. And then when you're about to retire, it's at that 60-40, that crazy 60-40. So the target date funds are not safe enough, based on my research, and there's others who are doing it as well.
Talking with the experts.
Hello, and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosesdavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And talking about YouTube, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ding on that bell so you get notified when new videos are uploaded. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hey, did you know that 78 million baby boomers are collectively worth $60 trillion? Most will spend this decade in the risk zone where investment losses can ruin the rest of their life. The risk zone is the 5 years before and after retirement. My guest, Ron Surz, is the co-host of the Baby Boomer Investing Show and CEO of several firms that provide investment advice to baby boomers. He is the author of Baby Boomer Investing in the Perilous 2020s. Welcome, Ron, and thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Rose. Well, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, so I guess when do baby boomers need to have started their investing journey?
Well, when they're young, the younger the better, and saving the most is certainly a smart thing. But what we're all about, and by the way, I don't know if the audience here is going to be Australian or US or where do you?
It's everywhere.
Everywhere. All right, so that 78 million people is just here in the US. And I couldn't guess online what the number is around the world, but it's certainly substantially more than that. And the 60 trillion is also got to be a lot more. So there's a lot of wealth that is in what is called the risk zone. And retirement researchers have identified a time period in all of our lives when we should really be, our number one objective should be to protect our lifetime savings. So at this stage, and I'm a baby boomer, and at this stage in baby boomer lives, the current savings are probably going to be as high as they're ever going to be. Because at this stage, you start spending down. And here in the United States, we used to have a retirement system that pretty much provided annuities for people. It's called a defined benefit system. But that's become much less popular. So here we've moved to what's called a defined contribution system, where you are very much reliant to make your own decisions. You can certainly buy annuities, but most people don't. And I think in Australia you have the superannuation system. Is that?
You do have your SEP, and then if you don't have enough money in your super, then you just go on the government pension.
All right, so you've got some safety there. What we have here is what's called Social Security, So one of the things, so we do what's called the Baby Boomer Investing Show. And I wrote a book that basically is sort of like a guided tour of the Baby Boomer Investing Show. We've got 35 episodes so far. And one of the episodes we covered what's called the retirement crisis. And I'm going to use US figures here because I don't know any others. But so there's 78 million baby boomers. 70% of those people, 55 million people, have saved less than $300,000. I don't know how to put that in Australian dollars, but in US dollars, $300,000 isn't going to get you. It's not going to get you very far. But what we did in this show was to give those 55 million people some guidance on how they can at least try to make that $300,000 last. And most of that reliance is for them would be on Social Security. So we started with sort of saying, what's the most expensive thing you're going to need to pay for in retirement? And it's housing. And here, housing is pretty expensive, but there are cities where rents are not that high. And they're not terrible cities. So one of the first things you might want to consider is moving to some place where the rents are low. Similar thing you might want to do is get a roommate or two roommates or whatever it takes to make your money last and be able to pay for your housing. Once that's, and by the way, you can arrange to do that with Social Security for most people and still have some left over. So you're not going to be spending all of your $300,000. So for those people, at least in this country, they're not going to, they'll be living frugally. They won't be, living under the bridge eating cat food. That's certainly, they don't have to do that if they're smart about how they're living. Then the other group of people are very wealthy and they've saved more than $2 million. And they've got a different problem. And their problem essentially is extended care. They're going to get sick. And do they really have a sufficient fortune to pay for that? And this whole notion of long-term care insurance comes up. And I think for the really rich people, they can sort of self-insure. The people in the middle have the same problem, but their decision for buying long-term care insurance is quite a bit more complicated. There's no pat answer for that. So that's the retirement crisis. Then many of our shows deal with what we know is the pat answer for investment advisors. And again, I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but here the ubiquitous solution is 60-40, 60% equities and 40% in bonds. And we have an association here called EBRI, the Employee Benefit Research Institute, and they survey investment allocations for people of various ages in their individual retirement accounts. And that is extremely enlightening in that for people who are just starting to save, 20, 30 years old, their average allocation is 60-40. And that's a fairly aggressive mix. Then the average allocation for people are 60 years old, 60-40. The average allocation for people are 90 years old is 60-40. You get the drift. There's no indication in the data that investors who are near retirement are aware that they really should be moving to defend. So this notion of the risk zone basically says if you're unlucky enough to lose money as you're moving from retirement to working life, it's going to be really hard for you to come back. You can try to go back to work. You can do a variety pack of things, but the thing that's most likely to happen is you're going to need to change your standard of living. And the related notion there is what's called sequence of return risk. And what that really amounts to is you care when you're going to lose money, if you're going to lose it. And if you lose it early on in retirement, it's going to matter much more than losing it later on in retirement. because it's going to impact the rest of your life. So we've been advising baby boomers, and I wrote the book, to be very, very defensive. And people say, well, what is defensive? And we say, we think you ought to have, during this transition period, 5 years either side of retirement, just during that time period, to be no more than 30% risky assets. And by risky, we mean equities and bonds. And then the other 70% should be in what's safe. And the definition of safe is really hard to come by. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But early on, we got feedback from listeners who said, so my consultant is really smart and I like him. And, he went to school and he works for a big firm and he's saying 60-40, is he wrong? So we did a whole episode on the history of investment consulting. Investment consulting has been around for 70 years and it's been evolving. There's been 5 major breakthroughs. The most recent breakthrough is not yet mainstream, but let me say, I'm not sure what's going on in Australia, but I'm going to say here, the consultants use what's called modern portfolio theory, and sometimes they abbreviate as MPT. Modern portfolio theory is 55 years old. It's not modern. And a lot of things have happened since. But despite that, what's underlying there, and it was not changed much at all, is a 60-40 answer. And it's pretty much, in terms of modern portfolio theory, it's the market. So the most efficient, the most diversified market is roughly 60% in equities and 40% in bonds. And diversification is good. So that's, I think, why that mix is so entrenched. But the most recent breakthrough is what's called target date funds. And I don't know if you have those there, or if maybe the superannuation fund does what a target date fund does. But the idea behind a target date fund is it takes a firm, by the way, it started for college savings plans. So it's been around for a long, long time here. And it just started to be used a lot in savings plans here. But what it does is it starts fairly aggressive when you're young.
Have you been thinking about starting a podcast? You can share your knowledge and expertise with people globally. Create original content that is completely unique from anything else out in today's market, not just in terms of style, but also perspective. And when we talk about revenue generating potential, well, let me tell you, it doesn't stop there. The time to start is now. You know that you should be doing it. However, many people are reluctant because they don't know how to produce it or what tools they need to do their podcast. Please feel free to email me at guest@talkingwiththeexperts.com today. And let's talk about how I can help you to build authority and credibility for your business through podcasting. Remember, don't wait for the opportunity, create it.
And then as you get closer to retirement, it does what all the researchers say, it gets more conservative. But what I'll say there is the unfortunate reality for target date funds in this country is it starts at about 90% risky equities when you're pretty young. And then when you're about to retire, it's at that 60-40, that crazy 60-40. So the target date funds are not safe enough, based on my research, and there's others who are doing it as well. So the idea is pretty good to at least adjust risk through time, but the implementation here needs a lot of work. So that's the new breakthrough, but the consultant industry has not yet embraced it. And they're still pretty much in this area of modern portfolio theory. The more recent implementation that the advisors are using is called management to objectives. And that's essentially trying to get your arms around what the client wants to do with their money, and then trying to pick a asset allocation that has a reasonable likelihood of achieving that goal. Now, there I will say the natural inclination is to move towards the middle. So you have a family of risk models going from high to low. It's that wrong, low to high or high to low. The tendency is to go towards the middle, and that's the 60-40 again. So even though sort of the mindset has changed and the objectives and everything else, that's still pretty much entrenched. So I know at the end of this, I'm going to just say it now before maybe you'll remind me later, but I'm going to do it now. My message to my fellow baby boomers is to, number one, be aware of what their asset allocation is. Now, I talked to my friends about this, and they don't know, many of them. And all they'll say to me is, I have this advisor, and he's done me well. And I'm not even going to bother him because I'm sure he's doing the right thing for me. So that's a mistake. You really should know. And then second, if you are where I think you are, somewhere around 60-40, you need to move to safety. The notion of safety is something that in normal times might mean cash. Just put your money in a bank account and you won't earn much money on it, but it ought to at least not lose value. Today in the United States, we are facing the beginnings of what will probably be pretty serious inflation. And again, I don't know if this happened. All right. So what's going on here, and I think it's going on, in most of the world, the central banks have manipulated interest rates to keep them low, and the only way to do that is to buy up bonds. So they've been printing money around the world to pay too much for bonds just to keep the interest rates low. And what's triggered the realization of inflation around the world has been COVID. So here in the United States, we started printing money in 2009 because we were having the beginnings of recession in 2008. And I think that's what happened around the world. Japan had been doing that even prior to that. So they were fighting their problems by printing money. So they were a poster child for printing money to solve your financial problems. From 2009 to roughly 2019, we had printed about $5 trillion. That's a lot of money. $5 trillion for us, to put in perspective. World War II was our most expensive war. And in today's dollars, that war cost $4.7 trillion. So quantitative easing has been called, is put in more than the total cost of World War II in current dollars. Then COVID came along, and we printed even more as a percentage of GDP than Japan. So we would not be outdone by Japan. We were going to, we have printed 5 trillion heading towards 6 trillion. So you had 5 to another 5, that's 10 trillion. Then here, President Biden just passed an infrastructure package for another $3 trillion. So now we're at 13 trillion. And he's got another 3 trillion that they're trying to get passed through. So $16 trillion. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot, it certainly is.
Well, it's paper money. And the notion of fiat currency is it will only work. Fiat means that someone said it works, like the government. But we were on the gold standard until the 1970s. So every dollar bill was redeemable. You go and get gold for it. And then what happened in the 1970s when Nixon was president, the French did something that you almost have to laugh at, but it's what happened. They said, we'd like our gold, please. Nixon goes, what? Do we even have that much gold? But I think they got it. And then he took us off the gold standard. So when that happened, instead of redeemable in gold or silver, which was on the certificates, now our bills say, in God we trust. So if you open up your wallet and you look at those pieces of paper, it's happened recently in Venezuela and in Argentina, where billionaires have become penniless. Those pieces of paper you can just burn because they're not going to buy you anything. And that's the beginning of what's happening here. So when we talk to our listeners about safety, we think they at least need to be a little bit concerned about inflation protected safety. And that here would mean inflation protected securities And there are government issues here called Treasury Inflation Protects TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. There are variable rate bonds that are issued here. So those are available. Then the other thing you can do, and this is not low risk anymore, is to move to assets that will tend to protect against inflation, like precious metals and other things like that. We've also talked about cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, we're moving here. Crypto is quite a big thing in Australia, and moving towards a cashless society.
Yeah.
So it's all on cards.
Well, one of the benefits of the cryptos is that they're not controlled by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, if the central banks were started to be able to manage the economy by managing the currency. If that goes away, we're in the Wild West. But I think one of the reasons cryptos exist at all is people are concerned about fiat money losing their value, hyperinflation. And we had a whole episode on cryptos. And the interesting thing that comes out of that, everybody sort of knows this, but when you have to step back and say, what is money? Well, money is a store of value and a means of exchange. Those are the two things that the reason you should like money. If we lose the store of value, if those pieces of paper become worthless, we need to have something else that's going to protect us. Now, gold is a traditional answer to that, and it really has a history of protecting against inflation. But as a means of exchange, it's not very good. You can't walk into a grocery store and chip off a little bit and get some bread.
Oh, damn. Why not?
Yeah, but it's so pretty. Gold is pretty. You got to give it that. Yeah. So I really view crypto as an invention that would probably be currently ignored if it weren't for fear of inflation. Mm-hmm. And no, it certainly comes at a time when younger people really embrace technology. And my grandson is trading these exotic new issues all the time, and he's making a lot of money on it. I'm very much of the school that you don't invest in what you don't understand. But when you're 20 years old, you can have some play money. You can do some speculation.
Aren't you, at 20?
Yeah, they are exactly.
I have a question about people that have retired or reaching their retirement age and have received their redundancy package from, their employer. Wouldn't it be best for them to pay off their house and all of their, all their bills before they start thinking about, using the things to live on?
Yeah, the way you spend that money is something we don't deal too much with, although that does fall into the realm of investing, I know. So I guess you can view that you could invest in your house. It's real estate. And one of the assets that are, this pretty has had a great success in protecting against inflation. So from that perspective, I would say, yeah, you probably want to do that. But a corollary to that again, I apologize for not knowing what goes on in Australia, but here we have something that's called reverse mortgages.
Yeah,
have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Do you have it there?
I'm not sure. Okay.
So a reverse mortgage is something that we've done personally, but a lot of retirement researchers recommend. And the notion there is there may come a time in your life. So right now, you might want to pay off the house. But 10, 15, 20 years from now, you may find that you need that money.
You draw down on your house, on the equity of the house. Yeah,
right.
We have that here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you could take out a loan, and that would be one thing to do. But then now you've taken out a loan, but you got to start paying that back. And do you really want to do that? So basically, moving is one of the ways to cash in on your home value. An alternative to that is what's called a reverse mortgage. And essentially, what you do is you set up a loan, and the way we've done is with a line of credit. But you can certainly take a lump sum out if you need it at the time. And what that line of credit does is it says whenever you need it, you can take out X amount of money, that whatever you set up under the terms. And we've found great comfort in knowing that that's out there, even though we hope we don't have to use it at all. But if and when we do need it, we could stay here. And basically we could start spending the kids' money.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, well, what did they need it for? You've looked after them all their life.
Exactly, right. So we don't have to move. We don't have to do anything else. We don't have to put a single payment. What happens on the reverse mortgage is when we move or die, then that loan is due and payable. And so coming back to, should you own your real estate? I think that's a smart thing to do. Just view it as an investment. By the way, one of the things we did in one of the shows was pretty interesting. We had an award-winning author on one of our shows, and he's in Israel. And we talked about investment advice in the Talmud, which is not the Jewish Bible. It's the sort of Jewish go-to book to live life. But the advice in the Talmud is a third in business, a third in land, and a third in reserve. And that just, I think it comes pretty close to what we've been preaching. And that third in land could include your real estate, your house.
Absolutely, yes.
So straight from God's lips.
Right, okay.
So it's complicated, but I think our message is probably not being heard as much as it should. Because I just know that most of the 78 million baby boomers are close to 60-40.
Ron, where can people find you if they want to know more about, retirement and baby boomer investments?
Well, let me spell my name, because that's the easiest way. So it's R-O-N. The last name is Surz, S-U-R-Z. And I have a variety of email addresses and everything, but you'll find me easy. I'm not hiding. Okay. So I have several websites. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook.
Right. And where's your book available?
The book is on Amazon. And if you don't even want to pay for it, I'm going to make you an offer. This is a special offer for your audience.
Oh, thank you.
I'll send you an ebook. And the ebook is important because the book has 2 or 3, and some chapters have 4 links to videos. So if you don't like to read, you don't have to read a word. You just go to the end of the chapter and start opening up these links.
Oh, my kind of book.
and watch a movie. But you can't do that with the hard, with the paperback edition. So with the ebook, you can do that. It's easier to read if you get a Kindle, which I can't give you because I have a contract with Amazon. But on Amazon, the Kindle is $9, and I don't get much of that. I get a penny out of that. So I'm really not doing that to make money. And Amazon also has a service, for lack of a better word, but for not much money, you can get subscription to all the Kindles you can read. So it could
what's it called? Orders.
Kindle something, I don't know, but you subscribe to this, and my book would be free with all the other Kindles that you might want to read.
All right, Ron, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very fascinating to learn about, baby boomer retirement investments. It's and what we should be doing with our money.
Well, we're all going to get there, and we're all going to go through the risk zone. And
absolutely.
I can't tell if you're near the risk zone or not, and I won't ask.
I could be, and maybe
not. But again, the taking risk in the risk zone is what I might call parachute jumping risk. The odds are pretty good you're going to land, but if you don't, the consequences are pretty disastrous.
Absolutely. So yes. All right. Anyway. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and
okay, thanks, Rose.
Wise words. Bye bye.
Yeah, thanks. Bye now. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Talking with the experts.